Before I start this video, if you're into gaming, check out g2a.com. The link is in the description of this video and in the comment section of this video. Now on to the video. Now I'm going to keep it as honest as I possibly can keep it. Both Gervonta Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather Jr., both of these guys, Big Bro, Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Gervonta Davis, both of these guys are scared of Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, you guys know me. I criticize fighters. I criticize a lot of fighters. A lot of fighters, including Vasyl Lomachenko. Because I don't think Vasyl Lomachenko is pound for pound number one, and I don't think that he's unbeatable like a lot of his fans. A lot of his fans act like he's unbeatable, even though he lost to Orlando Toledo. A lot of his fans act like he's done more than Terrence Crawford, even though he's won one belt in 2 weight divisions. And I don't think that's fair. Meanwhile, Crawford has won way more belts. And in my opinion, I think, and watch him move up to 147 and become a champion at 147, and people will still slay him and say that Crawford isn't deserving to be pound for pound. Anyway, onto the subject. Even though I criticize Lomachenko, I will tell you this: Vasyl Lomachenko wants to fight Tank Davis. He's been wanting to fight Tank Davis. I remember saying in my original channel that Tank Davis was afraid of Vasyl Lomachenko. He was afraid of him, and I remember specifically saying that Floyd Mayweather Jr. was afraid to let his fighter Tank Davis, his prodigy, the so-called Floyd Mayweather Jr. 2.0, to fight Vasyl Lomachenko. In the past recent days, Vasyl Lomachenko has been calling out Tank Davis. He's been calling him out on Twitter, on social media. He's been challenging Gervonta Tank Davis. Challenging him. Gervonta Tank Davis doesn't even reply. He's too much of a coward to even reply. He doesn't reply. He doesn't reply to Vasyl Lomachenko's tweets. Instead, he just writes stuff on his Twitter like, greatness takes its time. Greatness, if you want to be great in boxing, it takes its time. I'm looking after these whatchamacallit. I'm looking after these M's. So he's talking about greatness takes its time. I guess that was his only response to when Vasyl Lomachenko blatantly called him out. So in other words, he's saying, listen, I'm not going to fight you right now because, apparently greatness takes its time. So he's basically saying, I'm afraid of you, Vasyl Lomachenko. You're my daddy, Vasyl Lomachenko. I'm your son, and I'm afraid of you. Floyd Mayweather Jr. been afraid to put his fighter, Tank Davis, in there because Floyd Mayweather Jr. is painting Tank Davis as being the next Floyd Mayweather Jr. That's how he's painting him. Every time you see Floyd Mayweather Jr., every time he talks about him, he's always talking about how, he's going to be the next Floyd Mayweather Jr., implying that he's going to be undefeated, he's never going to lose, implying that he's going to be the biggest star in boxing when it comes to money-wise, when it comes to, money-wise. I remember 6 months ago, Tank Davis saying stuff like, Vasyl Lomachenko needs to build himself, he needs to be... He needs to be a bigger draw. Meanwhile, Vasyl Lomachenko is more known and he's a bigger draw than Tank Davis is in the United States. And I know this because more YouTubers in the boxing community talk more about Vasyl Lomachenko than they do about Tank Davis. But, Tank Davis is delusional like that. That was his excuse 6 months ago to win. Because I remember 6 months ago, I made a video on my original channel stating that Vasyl Lomachenko is calling out. Because he was calling out. He was telling him to man up. I was stating that he's telling Gervonta Tank Davis to man up and face him. And his excuse back then, 6 months ago, was, he's not a bigger draw. And now he's calling him out again. And his excuse is, greatness takes time. In other words, he's saying, I'm too much of a punk to fight you right now. Because, greatness takes time. And I know you're going to beat me. And trust me, Tank Davis would lose to Vasyl Lomachenko. And I criticize Vasyl Lomachenko, but I do think stylistically Tank Davis would beat him. Because I said this for many times. Tank Davis, the way to beat Vasyl Lomachenko is you got to dog him. You got to be physical with him. I don't think Tank Davis fights that way. I mean, he can get physical, but he's also a boxer puncher. I think he would get outboxed. Floyd Mayweather Jr. knows he will get outboxed. And this is why he's keeping his fighter away from him, because he doesn't want to receive that L from from Lomachenko. He doesn't want to receive the L. Now, of course, this is boxing. Tank Davis could catch it because Tank Davis is a puncher. I do think Tank Davis is a bigger puncher than Lomachenko, but I don't think he's faster on his foot speed, and I think that's going to be the major key in that fight. And I saw Tank Davis get outboxed by this like little Mexican fighter like 2 years ago. This little journeyman Mexican fighter. So this is why I know he would lose to someone like Vasyl Lomachenko. And again, listen, man. It would be better if Tank Davis fought Lomachenko and lost to him than for Tank Davis never fighting him. Because if Tank Davis never fights Vasyl Lomachenko, he's always going to be labeled the guy who dug Vasyl Lomachenko. That's what he's going to be labeled. I mean, Nicholas Walters fought him. Jason Sosa fought him. Even Guillermo Regan, a guy 2 weight divisions below him, fought him. So, Tank Davis being in the same weight division as him, why can't he fight him? Again, I can't blame Vasyl Lomachenko for this. It's clearly Tank Davis, the one who's not too keen to fight him. So I think what Vasyl Lomachenko should do instead is he should just unify with the other champions. I mean, you got that Japanese fighter who just became a champion against when he fought Tevin Farmer. People say you got to get decision. Fight him. Fight Alberto. That Alberto dude that just beat Jarius Corrales. That was an exciting fight, by the way. He's a champion. And I believe Miguel Persley is the champion. Fight these guys and become the unified champion at 130. I think he should do that. If he wants to be, if he wants me to put him at least pound for pound, #1, do that. And then move up to 135 and maybe challenge Mikey Garcia, because I think that's the biggest fight in 135. Challenge Mikey Garcia and you know, stuff like that. Again, look at Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford, he became a champion at 135. He became undisputed at 140. And watch him become a champion at 147. That's 3 weight divisions. So if Terrence Crawford could do that, why can't Vasyl Lomachenko do that? We can't have these double standards. But yeah, that's just my little rant on Gervonta Tank Davis being a coward. He's afraid of Vasyl Lomachenko. That's the fact. If you don't think he's afraid of Vasyl Lomachenko, you're delusional. I'm out. Check out g2a.com. The link's in the description. And purchase yourself some games, guys. I'm out.